Hi, good afternoon. Uh, I guess I just want to go over my, I just heard today that I got denied in another school. I know I applied really late to, um, a lot of these online JD Flex programs, so I kind of knew it probably wasn't, going to be any open seats. Um, and a lot of them, I think, are fairly new programs, so I was really kind of hoping that would be the way I would uh go due to my autoimmune disease and the medication I'm on for those. It makes me really susceptible to a lot of diseases and stuff. Um, and I also can't take any live vaccines to protect me from some like COVID and flu and stuff like that. Although I really never really had the flu, so I'm not too worried about that. Anyhow, I still have three schools to hear back from. Two I haven't heard anything, and one I am waitlisted. So, if not, worst case scenario, I'll take my LSAT. I didn't do LSAT. I just did the GRE, and I did not very well because I didn't really have the time to study. And when you are out of school for so many years, there's the problem that you do kind of regress. And although back in the day I was tested to be a mathematical genius, I am like really bad at math now, and it's sad. I wouldn't say really bad at math, but I've lost a lot of all of the skills that build upon each other that you learn while you're, progressing through school. All those uh, math, I can't think of the word, build upon each other. So I was really good at math in high school, uh, but kind of like, I don't want to say beginner, but um, probably maybe a freshman level in math of high school, and I need to do better. And vocabulary and spelling, kind of when you are a stay-at-home mom, kind of gets lost. So I can study for my LSAT and take that in 5, 6 months or something like that. And I can do that. I think I'll do well once I've studied for the LSAT and practice my math skills because you do need some math skills to take that for some of the reasoning. Anyhow, I do have, like I said, three more schools to hear back from. If not, worst case scenario, I'll probably apply for fall 2027, do my LSAT, and maybe get some good scholarships and do a brick and mortar, and just hope maybe by then, um, I can either get off my meds, get uh, some vaccinations against some bad stuff, and just go full time day and just do that. So we'll see. We'll see how that all works out. But I am excited to get to law school, whatever it is, either this fall or next fall. I'm sure I will get something. Like I said, I was accepted to three schools, but the scholarships were only around 25%, and they were in expensive areas like LA and Boston. And I knew that that would be just really costly living expenses on top of the 75% of tuition I had to pay. So a lot of my problem is I have to either retake the GRE or probably LSAT because that will open up more schools for me. But we'll see. Uh, so I know I was doing a series of my backstory, and I think I ended up around the year 2000, 1999, 2000. And I will get back to that because there are some pearls of wisdom and and things that can be done and should be done when it comes to children suffering from mental illness and dealing with that and hospitalizations and also their educational IEPs and stuff like that. However, I want to discuss something I see a lot. I mean, I see a lot of this on Facebook. Parents that are new to having either the children removed or the threat of having their children removed. And I do want to discuss this because it's really important because it's a trick that CPS does and uses to keep reunification from happening. So, what this is drug testing. Mm, it's just funny because I, with my case, well, with my grandchildren's case, not my personal case. I don't recollect ever once in the 10 years I was like voluntarily involved with DCF in Massachusetts, and then for a short while in Florida after ICPC was done on my son. I don't ever recollect having to take drug testing ever. Why? Because they knew I didn't do drugs. They actually, and it's funny because life wasn't easy in a lot of instances raising two bipolar children. It's just not. It's I think also parents that raise other um autistic children, Asperger's children, they know that there's good days and then there's not. So it's funny, and my ex-husband, was there when the kids were a bit older. But uh it's kind of funny because a few people have said to me, like, even I had a really great friend, Roxanne, at the time that I had mentioned in my backstory, I had lived in a homeless shelter while I was waiting for my apartment to be ready through Emmaus, which I love you, Emmaus, if I haven't said it enough. Anyhow, um, a lot of people said, I can't believe with what you have to deal with that you aren't abusing any substance like alcohol or drugs. And my I've had some good friends that were recovering alcoholics or drug addicts or family members also that are just like, I don't understand why you haven't taken basically to the bottle to deal with and all I had to deal with. And it was a hard road. I'm not gonna pretend that it was easy, but I loved my kids. Like with every ounce of me, every being of me. And I had to do everything for them, no matter how many miles I had to drive, how many appointments I had to have, how many doctors I had to meet, and even voluntarily being involved with DCF. And at times, they tell you how to run your life, even if it's corny or something that you wouldn't think, because not there's no I mean there might be stuff written in stone, but not every DCF worker goes by the book or have the same beliefs that the state statutes are on that. Like, for instance, a state might allow you to gently spank your child. Some states might. But DCF is a complete no hands, no spanking your child. And that also can be against your religion because, a lot of people are the spare the rod, spoil the child mentality through their religion, which I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying I never had the heart to spank my children. I would time them out based upon their age in different ways. Um, and there are a lot of good books on, I think one is 1, 2, 3 Magic, if I remember correctly, that I used to deal with years ago. Not positive. Um, maybe if someone knows, they can put the link in my comments or something. Um, but that was, back in the 90s. Things may have changed since then. But I never was drug tested that I can ever remember. I can remember one time I was drug tested when my children were in the house, and that was because I think I was working at Walmart in their accounting office, and they required that. I think that's the only time I was really drug tested, pee in a cup kind of thing, other than when pregnancy kind of thing, because they did not, believe that I was on anything. I mean, and, people know. People know if you you know, do drugs. There's telltale signs, I would imagine. Like I said, I didn't know very much about it when my ex was on drugs. But to people who know it, probably see telltale signs. So when I had gotten supervised visitation, now mind you, I passed not one, but two home studies. One was a DCF and one was a private. And I was still relegated to having to take P tests every time I visited my grandchildren, which was allowed once a month, which we had to drive back and forth really far to go visit them, because God forbid they put the case in our county, or because the mother eventually ended up living nearby. So I was given visitation for a couple of months, and then it broke up for several 4 or 5 months or something like that. For some reason they didn't give me visitation, and then I really kind of fought for it. And then it resumed in, like, I'm gonna say, like, April of 2017, something like that. But as we were driving the far drive to get to see them for that 1 hour, we were called as we were pulling into Panama City in Bay County, Florida, and was informed by one of the supervisors for DCF that, oh, by the way, when you come in, you have to take drug testing. Okay, I figured, sure, all right, just prove I'm not a junkie, like you might want to believe or want to tell the judge we are. Okay, fine, I'll do it. Well, it ended up being we were able to have supervised visits until Judge Anna Maria Garcia took them away in October or November 2017. So we did like April, May, June, July, August, September, October, maybe 6 or 7 months. 1 hour supervised visitation with Jennifer Smith, who is a monster, by the way, but we'll get to her later, and all the lies and falsified records she showed. And I will be bringing receipts, like I said. And eventually, when I go back on doing all this, you'll see the um documents that I'll show you. Like how strict supervision. Like you can't have cameras in there. Why? You can't have your phone in supervised. Why? Because they don't want you recording what's going on. Like when my grandson tells me he's getting beatings, but we'll get to that too another time. But we ended up having to take drug testing every time, although they all came out negative every single time. My husband and I had to take pee in a cup drug testing in their in-house. Yeah, they had their own drug testing facility in there. Oh, we'll talk about that later. But we had to. So one negative wasn't enough. Two negative wasn't enough. We had to take one every single time, which is a violation of your rights, which is in my 1983 case. But it was backed up by Bay County Judge Brantley Clark, And no, knowing like at some point the judge should say, okay, this is too much for these grandparents to get visitation. And eventually the case ended up transferring in between that 6 months to Anna Marie Garcia. And based on me supposedly to my grandson, I lost my supervised visits. And we will talk about that and show receipts of that and explain that. But I want to go to drug testing because I do see this a lot on Facebook where parents say, I'm going to be drug tested. I've been drug tested. My drug test came up negative. And also I find like some of them for some reason are in probation and their probation is also drug testing them, which why is there this double? If probation is saying this is coming up negative, why are you doing this to the cost of the taxpayers? Because we're not milking taxpayers now. Of course they are. But I want to talk about parents that are going through this. Um, a lot of them are like, why is mine coming up negative with my probation officer? Or why those that aren't probation, why are my tests coming out positive at DCF, but not with my probation officer? Or what do I do? Because I don't do drugs, but they're coming up positive at DCF. Funny, isn't that? I have to tell parents this. DCF says you're getting a drug testing done. Book something at a lab, whatever lab it is. I don't know what the cost is. Uh, some may be able to get it through in their insurance. Some may be able to find a low cost or free alternative. Or maybe you just have to have a rainy day fund. But you must back up their test with your test, especially if like it's an automatic result right there and they say, oh, you tested positive for such and such and such and such. Now I do know that there could be certain drugs that you may be taking legally prescribed to you that could pop a positive. Now I don't know everything about drugs or prescription drugs or even street drugs. But one thing I can tell you is get that backed up by an independent testing that you go out and you do. I can't even stress that enough. If you don't have the money, I suggest like one thing. If your children are taken away from you and if you don't have a job, get one. If you have a job, get a second job. Your kids aren't living with you. So you have the time to work your butt off, bank money because you may need to hire yourself independent um witnesses, like an expert witness or something like that, to prove that you don't do drugs or prove that you have good parenting skills or something like that. Um, or talk stuff. Um, at the end of the day, you can always rebuild your life. Do you need that Xbox or do you need your children back? Well, get the Xbox sold and bank away some money or whatever. We all have junk that we can probably throw in a yard sale or on marketplace or eBay or something like that, and and just save money for whatever needs. Sometimes they will charge you for so you have to pay for the supervision. Now that wasn't our instance; we didn't have to pay for supervision, but I've heard parents complain about that. So I just strongly suggest that if you cannot trust DCF, they will falsify anything and everything because it is a scheme to make money for the state. Right, governors? I'm sure you're all behind it. On the ones that not every state is deplorable when it comes to DCF, but there are some really bad ones like Florida, Texas, California, Michigan. Some are really, really bad. And I know Massachusetts that I used to have very positive results, that they are kind of, from what I've heard since I left 20 something years ago, that they've gotten bad. I moved in, I think September 2005 was when I left Massachusetts for the horrible state of Florida, which parents get out of Florida. Parents that don't live in Florida, don't visit. Don't visit Florida. Just don't. Because I've known in many cases of parents visiting Florida have had their children removed for whatever reason. Anyhow, I mean that's just my opinion. You don't have to do what I say. I'm just telling you my opinion is if you've got kids, don't go to Florida or Texas. Um and if you are being drug tested, get a backup. Especially if it's immediate result and they say you tested positive. But I would just get it back up anyways. And also there's also the option of a hair follicle test. Um, I don't know what all these costs are out of pocket. And, eventually when I become a lawyer and I fight for families that have DCF involvement, because I will be doing that, I will, once I have the money, once my practice is in business, I will set up funds that will pay for certain services, drug testing like that. But that's down the road. Eventually I'll create a scholarship fund for, people who want to fight DCF in my practice. So I will also be setting that up, but that's down the road, 5, 10 years from now. But I will, um, and I also want to talk later on about certain subjects and stuff like this, but I do want people to come to me, give me comments, um, in ways. And if you know something differently than what I say, send me a link or something like that. We'll discuss it. There's people that want to come and have a healthy discussion about anything DCF wise. Please feel free to message me, comment, or something like that, and we will go over these things because these are important. There's so many awesome people like Moses Farrow. I hope I said your name right, that wants to bring accountability because there's just too many children being harmed and some their lives are being snuffed because they were taken from their loving family and put in with strangers that just want to do harm, just want to collect a paycheck. It is generally cheaper to give a parent or parents services than it is to put the children in foster care. Because you think, say they have 3 children, that's monthly foster care. There's not many services that would require even respite or maid service, something like that would be so minimal. And a lot of these are like neglect. Why are children being moved from a home because the parents didn't bring them to the doctor for a minor disease or to a dentist? Sure, parents need to bring their children to doctors and dentists. I'm not saying they don't. Teach them how to. Don't just pull the kids and say, oh my gosh, these children are going to die because they have tooth rot. Come on. Because you can't see the floor? Come on. Because there's a little bit of dog feces in the house? Teach them how to clean. Have someone come in and teach them how to clean. Get them therapy to teach them how to clean. Stop feeling overwhelmed with life. Give them respite workers to come in a couple hours a week so the parent can get out and take a breather. There's so many ways that we can save families. But when this is a multi-billion-dollar business, they don't give a damn to save you. And another thing we're going to talk about stranger care versus kinship care, how children would best benefit being in a familiar home with people they know than being thrown into a home of a stranger, people they've never laid their eyes on before, and a home they've never slept in before. That has to be traumatic. I mean, can you imagine just being picked up, kidnapped, and thrown in someone else's house? Even if it's considered legal kidnapping? Can you imagine? That's crazy. However, we will talk about a lot of these things. Just please come to my channel. Let's have a discussion. Let's figure out a way to fix this problem because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that even if a child survives adoption or foster care, they still mentally have not survived that. I do believe there's a strong biological bond with family. Let's figure out ways to change. Let's figure out ways to make it a law that the children must go to a family member or a close family friend or a close neighbor, opposed to strangers who just want to harm them or use them as slaves or collect a check and throw them in a cage and give them dog food or whatever they do. There's a lot of sick son of a bees out there that will do that kind of thing. And it's just such cruelty. And we'll talk about like the testing that they force on parents that they don't force on foster care monsters or even DCF workers. A lot of them are just, yay, I got a high school diploma. Now let me at them. No. But thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to my channel. And please pass along if you know anyone who wants to talk about CPS and fixing it. Someone who maybe has nowhere to go or needs help with CPS or how to get the best treatment for their children that may have a mental disorder or the school's not meeting their needs. So just, hey, I'm here. That's what I'm for. Yes, I will be going to law school at some point. Um, as long as it's not, hopefully not a predatory school. You never know. Law school's law school. Law school is what you make of it. It could be the lowest tier or the highest tier. It's what you make of it, right, guys? All right. So I'll be back hopefully in a couple days, and oh, I don't know if I'll have any law school updates in a couple days. I'll think of something that we need to discuss. I'll probably go through like my Facebook feeds and see like what's something that parents are issuing. And I also do want to discuss Moses Farrow and his wage against adoption, and you know it's on his heart, and God bless him, to bring out all the children that are murdered. Or can you imagine that? Can you imagine your baby, and no matter what age that baby is, that baby can be 12, it's still your baby. Can you imagine your baby being taken by the CPS Gestapo, ripped from your arms, or you get a call from their school, DCF took your children, or something like that? And you imagine you're like, I will get them back. I trust my government. I'll get them back. No matter what I do, I will do everything it takes. And then they're put in foster care. And then you get that call. And your children's never coming. That child's never coming. You're going to bury your child. That's how you're going to get them back in a coffin. Can you imagine that? My grandchildren are alive, thank God for that. But I have lost 10 years of their life. 10 years. I wasn't able to watch them grow up and stuff like that. No, I didn't lose custody. I, retained all my rights for all my children, even though, there were times they were in and out of hospitals and stuff like that. And there were some instances where I had to temporarily sign DCF, um, like a guardianship owed to them, so they could pay because I couldn't afford some of the schools and hospitals. But we'll talk about that too later. why sometimes that has to be done, which is horrific that you even as a parent have to do that when there are agencies that should be helping parents with those needs. And sometimes the list is so long and DCF isn't, and you're stuck between a really hard decision. And I will talk about one instance with one of my case managers. We'll talk thoroughly into her, and I will show documents and bring receipts and stuff like that, as I said I will. Because it is a power trip for a lot of these people. And once they started learning that there were laws that made it a lot easier to strip parents' rights, they ran. They figured out methods and ways to do it, and they ran with it. Down the road, we'll be talking about all of these things. Please come, because we can't fix this if people stay silent. We all can't, there can't be like a couple dozen of us that are out there screaming. It has to be a couple of dozens of hundreds of thousands. Did I even do that number right? Like I said, you're doing bad at math. We have to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people come out. I know there's a lot of people that don't know. Don't get your kids back from DCF and say, this is over. Don't have to worry about this ever again, because you are forever on your radar until your children age out of your house. You are forever on their radar. They will recircle you. If they need children to fit a quota, they will circle back. You can trust me on that. There are parents who will sit there on Facebook and, yay, I'm a awesome parent. I got my kids back. That could be true. You could have done everything that was needed to do. There's a lot of parents that do the same thing. Some children are easier to adopt. Some children are higher commodity for DCF. It's just the fact. And they also can't have 100% adopted out. I mean, they have to have like some records that say that a good portion of children are returned home. But once again, if they need children, they will recircle back to you. That's why it may be good to move. That's just a thought. If you're on DCF's radar, they taking your kids, they brought them back. Personally, I'd move. I don't know, out of the state. I don't know, out of the area, but I'd move. I just would. Because once you've been taken and proved to be an unfit parent, it's easy to do it a second and third time, and how often it needs. But I want to hear people's stories too of what they did and how they got their kids back, and do they trust DCF again? Because DCF, even if they bring them back, they will stay in your life for a while, and you also be remembered at that school. Anyways, it's getting kind of warm in this room. I think I'm gonna go. I will be back on Friday before I have to go be sworn in to be my notary. I got my approval for notary. I have to go to court and get sworn in for that. So before I head out to the court to go do that, I will do another one. I'll think of something out. I'll go on Facebook and see what's maybe like a common question people ask, and see if I have an answer or someone else does. But thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And let's build this up. Let's get really loud and say no more. The government doesn't have the say on our children. Why are we allowing that? Right? All right. Have a good afternoon. Bye, guys.